do my best to articulate what it is I want to talk about. It has to do with disability. It has to do with what that word means. I mean, specifically where I am, which is America, and the way that disability is defined, but I don't think this is unique at all. I don't think this is just America. It's not even just Western culture, because actually Western culture is egoic culture, and egoic culture is global, whether it looks one way or another. The human culture that says you have to be better, you have to improve, you should feel shame if you're not. So you're not enough, you must be improving. That kind of perspective, that is the egoic perspective that has infused itself in most of human culture. Not all, but most of it. So in this country, in order to qualify in the eyes of the government as disabled, and I do want to talk about what that means, not only do you have to prove certain things are things that you experience, you have to prove that your experience of these things is distressing to you. You have to convince somebody that you are suffering. So the structural definition of disabled is that you are broken. That is the structural definition. That is baked into how we structurally diagnose and then define people as legally disabled. Is that this is a person who not only experiences different things, whose body or mind behaves in a way that we don't expect, but that they're broken, that it causes them suffering. And that is so critical to the definition of disability, that if you're not suffering in your experience of difference or whatever, then many people will not consider you disabled. So here we can see what we mean by that word when we're using it in this context. When society is using the word disabled, we are saying broken. And I know there is an act of reclamation that I'm fully on board with, of let's reclaim this word, because that is not what this means. Disabled does not mean broken. In fact, any of these words that we use to label and define certain experiences, specifically the experiences of people who have been marginalized, and they have been marginalized because these words have been used as a synonym for broken, for deficient. And it is time to let go of that narrative and say these words do not mean that. Disabled just means this is what my body can do, and it may not match the experience of what your body can do, or the experience of what society expects a body to do, or a brain to do, because the brain is part of a body. It doesn't mean anything about me. It means things about my experience, and it's an easy way to communicate that, but it doesn't mean anything about me. However, that's how do I want to say this? I am thrilled. I am utterly thrilled that more people, in particular the younger generations, are recognizing that they can use these words without it meaning something about them. That they can use these words to express parts of their bodily experience to one another, and then be able to share in similar experiences, and to help one another accommodate in various situations, to help us understand one another better, because you don't have to share an experience to accept it. You don't have to share someone's experience of themselves to accept that that's what they're experiencing. And you don't have to assign that as a character trait or some sort of piece of identity. It doesn't mean anything about them. And so more people, especially younger people, are using these words in a way that doesn't mean broken. And they are giving themselves unconditional permission to be who they are, as they are, and to relax, to stop trying to change, to not try to change, to not even take up that mantle of self-improvement, which you only take up when you believe the story that the self you are is not enough. So they're not trying, they're not buying it. They are starting out giving themselves permission to be as they are, to accept their experience as it is, and not feel bad about it, and not apologize for it. And they're giving themselves permission to have their experiences and not be suffering in them. And that is driving many people crazy. That is deeply offensive and threatening to people who have wanted desperately to have permission. And this is natural. This is not a judgment. Everybody wants permission to be as they are. We all want that. What we have not realized, most of us up until this point, is that we give ourselves that permission. We don't require that permission from some external source of authority. And that includes the mind. The mind is an external authority. You might experience it internally, but if you give it power, if you let the mind say that it knows better how to keep you safe, how to keep you well, that it knows better than you, who are experiencing the mind, you have made the mind an authority. So if you are still seeking the permission of your mind to let yourself be, to give up a story of suffering, because what suffering is, ultimately, is a story. I'm not talking about true grief or hurt or even anguish. I'm not speaking about that. The suffering that I am referring to is, first of all, the suffering of tension against what is, and that tension arises when we unconsciously believe, when we are unconsciously experiencing, so not conscious of it, that this story is happening. And this is tricky because you can be aware that the story is happening and still not aware that you're believing it. But the suffering of tension against what is being as it is arises because of a story in the mind that says it's not safe to be this way, it's wrong for it to be this way, it shouldn't be this way, or it should be some other way. It would be better, it would be superior for it to be some other way. These stories, which are just that, they are just stories, they have no basis in reality, and all they do is set us up in opposition to what is unnecessarily. These stories generate the tension that we know as suffering. And then we tell a story about that sensation. And we say, I am miserable. I am suffering. But instead of realizing that that sensation is coming from the storytelling of what shouldn't be, which is reinforced by that statement, by the way. When you tell the story, I am miserable, there is the silent line coming right underneath that says, and I shouldn't be. Instead of realizing that the sensation is caused by a story about what's happening, we mistakenly identify what's happening as the cause. What's happening with my body, what's happening with my relationship, what's happening with my job, what's happening in the world, what's happening with nature, what's happening with my kids, anything. We mistakenly give credit to the experiences, the conditional temporary experiences, as the cause of our suffering, when the reality is, it is our resistance to the experiences generated by an unconscious story that says that they are wrong, they are not safe, and they should not be that way. So how does this pertain to disability? What am I trying to say here? If suffering is tension against what is, then the release of suffering is relaxation, is no more tension, no more resistance to it, simply allowing it to be. And that is what we are all wanting. And again, not realizing we can give ourselves permission right now to just relax in what is. We have been seeking outside authority to give us that permission. We've been seeking it from outside authority. But the external authority, which has grown from the mind, grown from ego, it didn't start out there, it starts in here. The external authority is fickle, and it requires some sort of proof, because this is an exchange. If you want permission from the external authority, you had better give it something. So in order to, a reason that so many people want to be diagnosed with various forms of things considered disability is because that they feel would give them permission to relax. They want to relax. They are unaware that they can give themselves that permission. They believe that they require some sort of card that they can hold and wave to people and say, see, I got the slip, the doctor's note. I'm allowed to relax. And you can't judge me for it, and you can't tell me otherwise. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with that. It's a step. It's a step. But more and more people are wanting to prove that they have some sort of disability as defined again structurally by society, so that they can get the permission slip. What we want is the permission. That's perfect. That is natural. But what society requires of you in order to earn that permission slip is for you to prove to society that you are suffering. So can you hear where this becomes a trap? What we want is permission to stop suffering. That's what this is. Permission to relax, permission to accept ourselves, to stop suffering, to stop resisting what is, the way of our being, the way that everything is right now. That's what we're seeking, this permission to stop suffering. But society, the way that we are seeking this permission is through an avenue that requires you to prove that you are suffering. It requires you to perform very well a story of suffering in order to get permission not to suffer. It's a catch-22. You don't actually get what you're looking for. And as a person who has been diagnosed with a variety of disorders, physical and mental, and who qualified and proved my disability for many years. And as defined by the government, was disabled. This is a special thing to me. This is meaningful to me to have this discussion. And I'm not suggesting, because I've walked through this myself too, of like, do I discard the label disabled? Do I put that down? Because I can feel that what I'm actually saying and what society is saying when it uses that word is you must be suffering. Your experience must be worse than. And that didn't feel right to me. And so for a while, I didn't want that label. For a while I did, again, because I wanted the permission to relax, but I still suffered because I had to be suffering to earn the societal permission to relax. You see, it's fucked. You don't actually get anything. And finally, I had introduced to me the deconstructing of hierarchical perspective, how we use words when we mean other words, how to separate the word disabled from negative connotation and to let it mean what it means and not something else. And as I've done that, I'm more comfortable with using that word, but also when I use that word, I no longer mean the thing that many people mean when they say it. And even though I can use the word disabled, I no longer qualify. I feel more comfortable using that word to describe certain aspects of my experience than I ever have. But I no longer qualify as disabled in the eyes of society. And so the word has become less relevant to me. It's fine. It's not negative, and it is useful as shorthand, again, to describe experience. But again, to me, it just feels like a step towards saying I am having an experience, and that's okay. That's it. I know we're not there yet. I understand this is a process. I would like us all to reach the point, and I do feel the younger generations are moving this direction rapidly, the point of saying, here are the experiences I am having, and I'm okay with having these experiences. And I don't need you to tell me that it's okay. I don't need you to validate this. I don't need you to believe me. I don't need you to understand. I don't even need you to accept this, because I accept it. I accept it. I don't need someone else's permission to live the experience that I'm living, and to know that it's okay, to trust it, to be okay within it, to be at ease within it. And this is how we're going to take the next step of really investigating words that we have used to hurt people and why it is we feel the need to do that. And when we take the power out of those words and then we use them, but they no longer inflict wounds, they're not either a badge of identity or a scarlet letter. They're neither. They just sort of flow through us. We don't wear them anymore. They just move through us. And this is going to help us so much. Growing in awareness of what it is we've actually been running from. Why are we afraid of words like lazy? Why are we afraid of words like unacceptable or unapproachable? Why are we afraid of these words? Why are we so afraid of these words that we want to have an excuse? We want to be given some permission that says, no, I'm not that. I'm just this. I'm allowed. I'm not lazy and unacceptable. I'm disabled. What's that really saying? And I mean that genuinely. What is that really saying? Why are we still giving these words the power to bring us down, to shame us, to take away our permission for self-acceptance? For someone to call me lazy, unapproachable, unacceptable, why am I permitting that to have influence over me so that I am now in tension with my own experience? Why am I doing that? Do I have to do that? Do I have more power here, more choice here than I have realized? When someone is projecting their influence, the influence of a story, and they're not even doing it consciously. This is the thing. We don't do this consciously. It's become so automatic. It's programmed. When someone is saying to me that I'm not allowed to be as I am, I'm not allowed to experience what I'm experiencing and not suffer in it. The only way I'm allowed to have my experience is to suffer in it. That would allow me to trade for the external permission. But what if I'm choosing not to suffer? What if I'm not taking on that story? I'm saying, no, actually, I'm just allowed to feel this. Actually, I don't need to earn my right to have this experience and to be the way that I am in this moment. I'm just allowed to be this way in this moment. This is just allowed to be what is. What happens when we do that? We drive a lot of people crazy. A lot of people who have been arguing for their suffering because that's the only thing that's given them an ounce of permission to feel an ounce of relaxation. So they're going to keep arguing for it. And when they see that you're not, they're going to get mad. What do you mean? I was told I'm not allowed to do that. I was told that I have to suffer in order to be allowed to relax for even a second. And here you are just relaxing without suffering? How rude. Now that's lazy. That's rude. That's unacceptable. And I'm going to use the same words that hurt me to try to hurt you, to try to shame you and corral you back into compliance with the narrative that I have been complying with. Because when you don't comply, you threaten my entire understanding of reality. You threaten the identity that I have crafted, the identity of suffering that I have crafted for many, many years. By choosing not to suffer and not to apologize for not suffering, and just accepting that you are as you are and this experience is as it is, accepting that you don't really care about time, and if you're late, you're late, accepting that you don't really care about appearance, and the way that you look is the way that you look, and accepting that you're not trying to earn anyone's approval, so you're not performing for them, so you're not bothered if they're uncomfortable with that, and if they don't like something about you, you just say, okay, that's fine. And you don't apologize, and you don't try to change to please them and appease them, and you're not suffering. What the fuck? You're not suffering to earn the permission to stop suffering because you've seen the pointlessness of that. So immediately you've seen through the bullshit and said, oh no, I don't have to do that. Well, that's dumb. That's silly. That is so much of the younger generations. And they are just pissing the living daylights out of people who have been performing suffering and have crafted this whole immaculate victim identity in order to carve out a tiny segment of security in themselves. And I'm not shaming that. That's hard. That fucking sucks, man. I know it sucks. But it's time to put that down. It's okay. Better late than never. Better now than not at all. We can stop performing suffering for the social permission to be as we are. To have every experience, whatever it is, every condition, and just not be suffering in it because we're not judging it, we're not resisting it, we're not saying it should be different and it's terrible and it's miserable. That's a denial of reality. That's why it feels so bad. Because you're not telling the truth. The truth is, it is what it is, and if you were actually in it, curiosity could arise. Interest could arise. Bottom line, you would be relaxed. You'd just be here, feeling. And there might be pain, yeah, there might be hurt, there might be a lot of it. But if you're not resisting it, you're just fully in it, experiencing. It's interesting, it's curious, it's like you have turned on this backlight. And now everything that was here is still here, but it's lit from underneath, and you see that it's glowing from within. Now all of this that looked opaque and dark and heavy has this ethereal lightness to it. It's less dense than you thought it was. And it's new. It's different than you thought it was. It's unfamiliar. And now you are experiencing reality, and it's like being here for the first time. Not resisting it, not suffering in it, not lost in the story about it. You're just here. You're not suffering. And then you can have whatever experience is present, whatever is happening with the body, whatever is happening with the mind. Whether or not it fits into some societal expectation, into your own internalized mental version of that expectation. It doesn't matter. It just is what is. And then you become less attached to the labels. You can use them or not. Sometimes they're useful, they're helpful. Many times they're just irrelevant. You can pick it up and put it down just as quickly. And when you use those words, you will use them to mean what they mean. Something about your experience and nothing about you. Nothing negative. Nothing that implies that you must be having a worse time than other people. You must be suffering. That simply isn't true. There is no point at which you must be suffering. It does not matter what conditions are present. It doesn't matter if your body or your mind is broken and dying. You do not have to suffer. Ever. of course, if you do, that's okay. That's okay too. You can get to this meta level where you don't have to suffer in suffering, actually, and that is a magnificent thing to realize. When suffering arises, when the mind is doing its thing and it's generating stories and discomfort and you just can't look away from them, well, you can relax into that experience too. You can say, this doesn't have to change. I know that there's a voice in my mind saying that it does, and I see that voice. And instead of trying to change it, instead of challenging it, I'm just going to see that voice. And I'm going to listen and say, okay, this is what's happening now. And I'm going to get really curious about the nature of suffering, the experience of suffering. I'm going to experience suffering consciously. I'm going to be here for it, fully present for this show. I'm going to watch this unfold. I'm not going to try to change it. I'm just going to observe and sense and feel and soak this up. And now suffering has a backlight. And suffering gets to glow. And when it does, it becomes breathtaking. So that's it. I expect that anyone who sees this video will understand what I'm saying. It's possible that some people don't, and that's okay. But it's time that we stop performing suffering in order to earn the permission to stop suffering. That's never going to happen, right? You can see how that's never going to happen. To do the thing that you want to stop doing in order to allow yourself to stop doing the thing, this start and stop and start and stop, and it's really exhausting and it's uncomfortable. Unfortunately, that pushes us into a state of burnout where we finally say, I can't do this anymore. And we reach a place eventually of unconditional acceptance of, well, it doesn't matter if anyone accepts me in this or not. I am tired of suffering, so I'm going to stop. And then it's a new journey, and there's still going to be some back and forth with this, and that's normal, and that's okay. But we're taking these steps. We are moving this direction very quickly, actually. This is not going to take another several generations to reach a really deep understanding of. It's happening day by day. And that is pretty fucking incredible. Anyway, you have permission to stop suffering. You don't need it from me. But when you do, that's fine too. We just keep finding ways to relax in it. That's what I got. I love you. Take it easy.